It's possibly the most unlikely place for the road to basketball greatness to begin. Here on Newfoundland and Labrador Highway Route 100 through the Cape Shore community of Patrick's Cove. A spot better known for fishing than sports. A place where the word net would be something you threw into the ocean, not something you threw a basketball into. But one man changed all that, putting the tiny town on the basketball map in this province, this country, and ultimately, the world. For the kid from Patrick's Cove, it was always an uphill battle. One of the biggest obstacles in the beginning was finding a net and a patch of pavement to play on.
First we had it on the shed, just a piece of plywood, and we used to beat the spokes out of a bicycle wheel. So we'd shoot on that, and then it came with those cheap nets, the big old round thinny ones, but then you hit the ball off that and that'd bend. So just started getting creative with it, and then we finally built, I had one in the yard for a while, but that was on gravel. Funny story with that one, I was telling the guys, they didn't believe me, but to make the asphalt on that spot, we used to go around and pick up bits of the road that would fall off in the wintertime, and then we got the drum and we lit the fire underneath the drum and we tried to melt the asphalt down. So needless to say, it was probably the same as the gravel. But after that then, I got my aunt and uncle to convince me, I convinced them to let me put it down on the road, and that's where I was playing all the time.
If you don't know the story, you might not believe it, but this hoop, homemade with fishing net as backstop, sitting by the side of the road, would launch English further than any other basketball player this province has ever produced.
Me and my uncle got these trees, we got them cut into the sawmill and we built the stand. And I usually just have one single one coming up here, but it was always blowing and stuff in the wind and it was never very stable, so we designed this one.
I was there all the time. I mean, the minute I got off the bus, boom, drop off my school bag, and I was down there till dark. I was always there every day in the summertime, so that was kind of the thing. I think the local people, they always knew I was there, so they'd be slow. Some people stop and take some pictures, but it was more so the tourists that would come to the bird sanctuary. So a lot of people come out there to visit that, and they would just be in awe. Like you'd see the strange license plates and the European license plates, and they'd, with the accent, they'd stop, and they were pretty much amazed that that was going on.
But it wasn't always happy memories in his hometown.
It's a memorial tattoo. The first two are my mom and dad, the dates when they died, and the last one in the middle is, on the bottom, is my uncle when he died.
In the mid-1980s, when he was just 5 years old, English's young life was forever changed by tragedy.
My parents died in a fire, and my 4 brothers and I survived, and I came to live with my aunt and them, and they went. One of my second oldest brother went to Manuel's, and my 3 other brothers just live about 10 minutes away.
His parents passed away not long after the incident.
I don't remember much about the fire, just like vague little memories. I don't know if they're true memories or what you hear people talk about. I remember a few things. I remember talking to Mom after it, but then as the days go on and things go on, I don't remember much.
Pushes me a lot more because everything I do, really I do for my parents, right? Helps me, push me, keep me going. It's like, if you want to stop, you just think, they're looking out for you and watching you, so you just keep going.
I found the hardest thing for me is when I became a teenager and I got older, and you're wondering, are they watching you? You're wondering, are they proud of you? You're wondering, are they happy with who you become as a man? I guess as a kid, you really don't know what's going on, but then as you get older, it really sinks in and you deal with things, and it can become extremely difficult. You find long nights, lonely nights. You find if things are not going well, you wonder what's going on. You ask a lot of questions. Why me? Why this? What are you supposed to do? Do you quit? Do you give up? Do you give in? Or do you keep fighting? And I chose to keep fighting. Let's go, Kyle.
Even though he was just a teen dealing with a childhood tragedy, English kept driving on the courts. He earned a spot on the 1997 Canada Games team when he was just 16 years old.
It's Canada Games, you're going to play against the best provinces, best players from each province, and they'll be more experienced than what I am because I'm younger, so I'm just looking forward to play against them.
English's drive to make a future from basketball was fueled on by those who said he couldn't make it, and ultimately forced him from his home. Looking for more exposure and to catch the attention of university scouts south of the border, he, like many Newfoundlanders before him, headed west.
So I moved all the way up to Toronto to try to get recruited, and the teachers went on strike. So I decided to make a homemade video of myself, and I was in the gym doing crossovers and moves and dunking, and then at the end of it I put a championship game of us versus Harbour Grace in grade 11, and I went into, they had a theater room, so I went in and I converted over like a couple of hundred tapes, and I sent them out to, I got the guidance counselor at the time, he got me all the college addresses, so then I stamped all the things and I sent them to all the schools.
How many would you think you sent?
I'd say 150 or more for sure. Yeah, I was in there for hours just copying these tapes, and a lot of the schools I sent it to were extremely interested, and they were like, I want to see you play, and I was like, well, I'm not playing, you know. So we had, after the teachers came off strike, we had one tournament there. I think I averaged like 40, so that drew some attention.
English then took his skills to a series of showcase camps in the United States. His playing there solidified him as someone to watch, including a standout performance in New Jersey.
So after that weekend, I had about 50 scholarship offers. And then I went to Hawaii to basically do a visit. I was like, I'll never get a chance to go to Hawaii. So all these schools were calling me like, don't sign when you go there, it's gonna be beautiful, blah, blah, blah. And the rest is history. I signed when I got there. My freshman year, I didn't get to play much. Struggled. Coach Riley Wallace didn't like to play a lot of freshmen. He was more old school, and you had to put in your time. But whatever way it worked out, a couple of guys got hurt or weren't doing what they were supposed to, and he finally gave me a chance. And to be honest, right up to that point, I was ready to transfer. So there was about 10 games left, and my numbers got really good, and we went into the tournament. We actually made the tournament, so we went in as an 8 seed. And we ended up winning it, and I was MVP of that tournament as a freshman, and in the championship game I think 28 or 32 points, and it actually won in overtime. So my whole life turned upside down then. I went from being a nobody to a lot of people were watching me, a lot of draft boards were watching me. I mean, I was the main guy at our school, and everything changed for me right then.
And everything changed for English off the court as well. After his first year in Hawaii, English came back to Patrick's Cove and went out fishing with his Uncle Junior.
He wasn't feeling well that day at all. He don't usually ever complain. He just wasn't himself, you know, and he asked to come in and he never asked to go in, you know. He got up on the wharf and he never gets out of the boat. We unload the fish and go on. He got up on the wharf and then he just said my name and collapsed, and it was crazy. Yeah, it was a tough one.
Without his biggest fan and supporter in his corner, English returned to Hawaii more determined than ever. In 2001 and 2002, he led the Rainbow Warriors to the biggest stage in college basketball, the NCAA Final Four tournament.
Hawaii is a beautiful school, but to get a path to the NBA is extremely hard because you're on an island. A lot of scouts are not really seeing you unless it's tournament time, and obviously you play your best basketball when you're in your home court environment, so they'd only see me on the road. But for us to go to the tournament, you go in there, and I think we played, I forget where we played, but it was like a 60,000 foot arena, right? And we went out there and there's cameras everywhere, and that was kind of the thing. We were kind of starstruck as a team.
Hawaii lost in the first round in both tournaments, but English's stock as an NBA hopeful was on the rise.
I kind of try to stay in the spotlight sense of not letting that stuff get to me. You know, and at the same point is always, everybody wants to do the stories, everybody wants to score 20, and everybody wants to be the main guy, but how you handle that is what I feel develop is your character. You know, either team is going to gravitate toward that, or they're going to be like, who does this guy think he is? So I try to handle that stuff with the right way and the right balance. So I kind of never let it get to me because I felt my journey, I wasn't ready, I wasn't done. So I was like, you know, this ain't it, this is just the start.
English finished up his third year at Hawaii eager to move on.
I declared for the draft. I graduated early, so I felt it was time to make that next step. I was an early entry because I could have went back for my senior year and done some master courses or whatever, or work on my master's degree. But I entered the draft because my stock was high at the time.
And the interest was there. 13 NBA teams invited English to come for a tryout.
And if I wanted to go back to school, I would have had to reimburse all those teams for anything they paid for me. So these are NCAA rules. So I would have had to reimburse them for airfare, hotel fees, and any meals they gave me. So that was a substantial bill because they're flying you first class, they're putting you in the best hotel. So it was definitely probably, I'd say 50 to 75,000. So if I wanted to go back to school, I would have had to come up with that money to pay them back in order to be eligible for my senior year. So I decided to hire an agent and take my chances.
English gambled and hired a real estate agent with no experience representing professional athletes.
It was probably a big mistake I made with agent selection. This was more of a situation where I was his first client and I never should have subjected myself to that. But I had nobody to look to, I had nobody been there before me really, and I trusted some of the wrong people.
At a bar in Toronto, English sat, surrounded by family, friends, and the media to watch the 2003 NBA draft. All eyes on him, waiting to hear his name called.
Things don't always go as planned, and I didn't expect this to happen.
I didn't get drafted. It was a tough night. I was a big deal, obviously. One of the next best coming from, let's say, a Steve Nash, and there was a lot of hype surrounding me because I played some national team stuff, and all my family flew up. My girlfriend at the time, was my wife now, was there, all my brothers, and we're in like a couch-like setting, and every pick, all these camera lights come on, and I'm just there like, okay, anybody just take me. So as it went on, like I said, once it got to teams that I felt that where I should have went, once you got around to 20th, I was like, okay, anytime now. And then guys start slipping, and then all these Europeans that nobody knew about were start getting taken, and it was like a snowball effect, and it just went through. And teams were calling me saying, you know, what's going on, what are your plans? And I didn't understand. I was like, just draft me. They're like, no, we have no picks left. We want you to come for Summer League. I'm like, well, why are you calling me? They're like, well, I tried to call your agent, but his phone is off. So yeah, it was a rough night. Let's just leave it at that.
2 weeks after the heartbreak of not getting drafted, the Indiana Pacers signed him to a 2-year contract.
I'm not just going to be happy to go in there and drive a fancy car and wear the clothes and stuff. I'm going to get in there and I'm going to work the way I've been working to get where I am right now. And I'm not going to stop. When I stop improving, that's when I'll stop playing.
That was going great. And then they made a change and they fired their GM and they brought in a new coach. And I was with Isaiah Thomas at the time, who really liked me. And I felt that would have been a niche. And again, my whole world turned upside down. So they had me in a house and they had my wife in school and I had a car. And then the last hour after the hour, I got cut. So it was devastating, to say the least.
Heartbroken, English didn't quit. He moved on to the NBA's Development League. He played there for 2 years until he got a call from the Orlando Magic.
They got my ticket, I went to the airport, and then as I was on the way, a big man went down, and they're like, no, we can't sign you. We need a big man, we're still watching, we're still following you. So it was one of those things where you're like, you're so close, but yet you're so far away.
When Carl English was unable to secure a spot on an NBA roster, he then headed east to play in Europe in 2005.
When you're in Europe, you're like a rock star, you know, so it's a whole different ball game, because when you're in that city, let's say it's 3-4 million, you know, you're the main attraction.
He started in Italy and quickly moved on to Croatia.
And I tore that up. I was MVP of that league and leading scorer in 2 different leagues, and we ended up winning it all. So it was a great stepping stone there. And after that, I had some NBA stuff after that as well, and like a lot of interest.
Interest that saw him once again come close to achieving his dream of playing in the NBA, this time with the lone Canadian team, the Toronto Raptors.
Jay was the coach, Jay Toronto, who coached me national team, and it was a great opportunity, it seemed. So I went in there, did all the mini camp, and just before we went to Vegas, they made a huge trade and brought in 4 guards. So from going into that situation, had two spots, to overnight, you know, he looked at me and said, Carl, we just signed 4 guys. He's like, I know what you got on the table. He's like, even if we kept you, you're going to lose money. He's like, you got to take what you got on the table.
Inglis defendido ahora por Rudy Fernández. Intentará devolvérsela. Lanzamiento de Cal Inglis. Canasta para el...
English put his NBA dreams aside to focus on European paychecks, taking his talents next to Spain.
Amazing basketball. Went there again. I played Gran Canaria my first 2 years. I had my son in Gran Canaria, and the next year I went to Victoria. We won a championship there. That was an amazing team. There were 7 guys on that team that were in the NBA or played in the NBA. So that was amazing team. We went to the top 8 in EuroLeague as well. And then the next 7-8 years, I was all over Spain.
English spent the off seasons playing for Team Canada, 12 years in total, including a memorable game against the United States, where he went up against one of the greatest players of all time, Kobe Bryant.
Andy Routens as well, still a collegiate player.
Michael Red was 9 of 9 for the entire Tournament of the Americas from the free throw line, and he misses one here. English off.
English's tour then saw him move on to Greece and Puerto Rico before returning to Spain, and finally, Germany. But like the boomerang that exists in almost every Newfoundlander and Labradorian, English came home, this time for the NBL Canada and the first pro team in St. John's. Carl English's career brought him back to where it all began, to set up the sport he loves in his home province, the first pro basketball league to play in St. John's.
There was a lot more involved in this than money for me. I've always came here. I've always been a proud Newfoundlander. I mean, I played for Team Canada for 12 years. lot of people know me, but then a lot of people have forgotten about me as well.
With English on board, the fans bought into the St. John's Edge. Mile 1 Centre was among the league leaders in attendance, including thousands who were on hand to watch him break the single-game scoring record, a whopping 58 points.
If you've ever been in an arena, when Carl is there playing, everyone wants to see what he's doing. Everyone wants, he scores 58 points. Everyone wants to see him do that again. Every movement is tracked and watched. And what it does from the fan, it helps to grow the game. Now younger fans and younger kids now have someone to realize that you can touch and feel and aspire to. So, his impact goes well beyond what's happening on the court.
English was the MVP of the league, and he led the Edge to one of the best records in the NBL Canada, making an impact in almost every game he played in at 37 years old, the age when most pro ball players are calling it a career. But he doesn't forget where he came from, taking the Edge out into the community to give back and to help grow the sport in Newfoundland and Labrador. From the lone highway in Patrick's Cove to the hard courts all over the world, English proved that nothing could hold him back.
I dribbled on grass, I dribbled on rocks, I dribbled on anything. So to me, it's about how far you're willing to push yourself. And right now, it's a whole different animal because I'm 37 years old. You know what I mean? When I never used ice till I was 30 years old. I was playing on torn ligaments, you know what I mean, on my ankles, and I'm like, I don't want people to think I'm soft. My ankles would probably be good if I didn't do that right now. So it's a whole cultural thing, and it's a whole thing. I'm very old school in how I train. I'm very old school how I prepare and work. I just think there's nothing else than hard work. Hard work beats all. I just went by knowing.
At Center Court at Mile 1, reflecting on what has happened, the question of the NBA comes up again.
My biggest regret, and I'll tell you now, is that I didn't leave the money and try it. When I got good, I didn't come back and try it. When I got good, I stayed there and I got better and better, and I tried to dominate that market over there. And yes, I got to the level and I was the top over there, but then I should have stopped and chased it and seen where I ended up. And then if I failed, I can go back over. And that was what I regret. It's not the regret that I didn't make it, it's the regret that when I was good enough, I didn't try.
Many of these fans don't know the backstory as to how the kid from Patrick's Cove ended up here, what he's gone through, what he's achieved and overcome, but neither he nor them care. For English, it's always been about his family, his home, and his love of basketball.